Okay, big mistake. Couple big mistakes here. Do not glue ring 3 onto ring 2 till you've got your utility arms mounted. I have learned the hard way here. I made a couple mistakes. First, data panel, data logic panel, charge bay panel. Those are supposed to be put in before ring 3. I did not notice that. Michael Baddeley's got a video out there that came out after I started working on this that tells you that. He loads the 3D files in Fusion so you can see the files, and then you can take individual parts off, put them on, move them around. So he shows how these panels are made to slide in before you put the third ring on, because once you have the third ring, it kind of blocks where they slide in. I had no idea. So I was able to get them in anyways. Kind of went in this way first, and then was able to pull them in this way and get them in. The other next thing I did, you can see that these, apart from the panel, there's a top piece, right? Obviously, so it makes this like a boxed in section. The lower part is part of the ring, and then this panel is this wall, and then the top wall is a separate panel. So there's one for that side and one for this side. Here's this one, which glues on thusly. Except now it's not going all the way in. Yeah, don't put that one in either yet. So I had that one in, and then because I had all three rings glued together, I thought, okay, before I paint this, again, I'm almost ready to paint. I still need to do final sanding of the primer. There's a couple spots down at the bottom that I want to hit with some primer just to get some more primer on them. And then sanding, and then I'm pretty much, I think, ready. But I wanted to see if my arms fit. So how are the arms held in? Well, shoot, I didn't bring a small screwdriver to pop it out. This is a pin, a 3D printed pin that goes down. It goes through this ring, and then the utility arm back there has a washer, top and bottom. And then there's another hole in the body underneath. So this pin goes into the body through two washers and then ends down there just in the body enough to stay stable and hold that arm in place. Okay, that's your top ring, your top utility arm. Now, bottom utility arm. How's that one held in place? Well, it's not from the top down. It's from the bottom up. There's a hole right down here. If you have that top panel on, you can't get to that hole to put this pin in. So you can see right here, this is the pin printed in PETG, and it goes up through this hole in this part of the body, which is part of ring 3. Okay, goes up there, and then again comes through a hole in the body into a washer that's inside the arm, through another washer that's in the top of the arm, and then just up into the body about that far to hold it in place. Well, yeah, first I had the lid on there. So you can't get to the hole to put the pin in. So I popped off that lid and then realized that my hole, just like the other side, the hole is a bit too small. I couldn't get the pin in. This drill bit is 15/64, which is about the same size as the pin. But if you'll notice, it's too long to be able to go in there and even try and twist it by hand to make that hole larger. So I had to come up with something small enough to fit in here that I can run up through the hole all the way up to here where it comes out to make that opening larger. So what I ended up using, I have various taps. These are you put them in a hole and it adds threads to it. So these are actually 1/4 inch. They're bigger than the hole is supposed to be overall, but because it's threaded, I figured maybe if I put it in, I mean, I should have maybe just bought one of these in the right size, but there's just barely enough room to get these in there and get it started in the hole. So I got it up that far, put a wrench on the end, and I don't have a wrench that fits that, so I was just using a pair of pliers and just cranking it over and over and over as it worked its way up through. I have 2 of these. One is, they're both the same size, but one you might be able to see is fine thread pitch and the other one is coarse. So first I ran the fine thread pitch through and then I ran the coarse thread. And I still couldn't get the pin to go through, which hopefully I'll be able to get the pin out. Yes. So I started shaving off material from this pin until I got the pin so it will just go in there. Now, that's going to be just a slight issue. I hope it's a slight issue because you can see what I'm talking about. There's a hole underneath here. The pin goes up through that and into another hole in the top. And here are the washers that are in the utility arm that are supposed to be a tight fit. And as you can see, that one just fell out. Mine are not a tight fit. Sigh. I don't know why. My tolerances have been good elsewhere, but wherever there's a bearing like that, it seems like my print is a bit too large. So yeah, it's supposed to, have a nice smooth swivel on that pin, which means the pin is supposed to go tight into the bearings. So the pin is in there tight enough that it kind of holds these bearings in place. And it's not, because I had to shave it small enough where I could get it up into that hole I made. So now, instead of being tight on the bearings, it's a bit loose. The bearings are a bit loose in the utility arm. That I am gonna, when I prime these, I'm gonna get prime in those holes, and that should make it a tight fit. So I'm not too worried about that. But obviously the bearing is not going to be spinning as a bearing should, where it's the outside is trapped in the arm and the inside is trapped in the pin, and so the bearing is actually spinning on the bearings. What's going to happen is this pin is going to spin inside that center hole. So I don't think that's a huge issue, but it does allow some wiggle room so the tolerances aren't that tight. Now I'm not going to cram this back in there with one-handed once I got it out, but as you can hear on this one, it's rubbing. And this one likewise, I had to make the pin a bit smaller, and I was able to take the 15/64 drill bit and drill through the top. So this one is in, but if I lift up on the arm, it fits kind of sort of with no rubbing. So I believe I need a little tiny thin shim washer to go underneath here, which I don't know I'm going to be able to get one that's small enough to do that, but I hope so. So I'm a little bit worried about this rubbing. I mean, right here like this, there's no rubbing, but there's going to be white paint. Now I still do, again, I need to do some sanding of the primer to smooth it out, but there's going to be white paint on here. These arms are going to be blue, have blue paint, coat of primer and blue paint, so that might be a tight fit. Because yeah, if I just let it go, it's hitting on the bottom. It's not like a huge amount. I mean, you can see there's a gap, bigger gap on the top than the bottom. Because I'm this close with the camera, it makes it look, you know, more exaggerated than it does if you just look at it with your eye. But yeah, the bottom of this piece should be up higher. So I think if I put a shim under there, that will take care of that. I hope. But it's not terrible. And I swear, the more issues like this I'm coming into, the more I'm thinking, just make it a static droid and don't make it so it's radio controlled with the arms opening and everything else, because I don't know. I'm just getting a little frustrated that I don't have this thing painted yet. So yeah, that was the fun today, was making this pin a bit smaller. This pin is not exactly the same as the other one. The other one is the same size all the way through. This pin is a half circle, like you see here. This fits into a recess in the arm, and then there's the blue data port thing that goes all the way across here that'll hold that in place. So underneath this, it continues the half moon shape, and then the half moon shape stops and it turns into this size pin somewhere around there or so, going the rest of the way down. So both of those I printed in PETG because PETG has a bit more flex, and I think it was recommended in the 3D printed droid guide that I'm following, as far as materials and infill and wall thickness and all that stuff. So yeah, at least now I can get my arms in there. The other thing about this supposed to be tight fitting in the bearings is that will help hold it in place. Because mine's loose, it's going to drop down. Now, it shouldn't drop down too far to where this arm comes out. At least I don't think so. It's going to come about that far out. Because what it's going to do is it's going to sit on top of this. So this will be mounted in place inside there. And then this pin is just, because it's not going to fit tight in the bearings, it's just going to kind of sit on top of that. And that'll be what holds it in. There won't be enough pressure for it to like saw its way through that plate. This is just PLA, regular PLA. So apart from the fact that this is PETG and softer, that's a flat surface on a flat surface, I'm not worried about that digging its way through. So that will hold it in place. And if I ever need to get that arm out, you just, I guess, have to snap this panel out again, which makes me think maybe it's better not to glue it in with plastic glue like I did, but maybe hot glue it in just to keep it up there in place, because if you ever need to get your utility arms out, you need access to this pin, and you can't do that when that piece is up there. So yeah, fun. Other than that, again, it's looking pretty good. Just needs, like I said, a little bit more spray paint, some areas on the bottom. I sprayed the bottom yesterday because I haven't posted the video, but I've got the threaded rods going through and then flush on the bottom. So I've got a couple videos on how I did that, but none with the results after I primed the bottom. So I think as soon as I cut this video off in a minute here, I'll probably turn this over and film that from the other side, which is a problem because I cut these bolts long, so they stick up higher than the droid. So if I flip the droid upside down, these bolts are on the ground and not this edge. And with those on the ground, there's a chance that they could be pushed down through and pop out the bottom where I have them now epoxied in. So I should have maybe actually tried to get those to the right size before messing around with them and installing them, and I didn't. I just made them long because it's easier to cut a little bit extra off than having them end up too short. And there's nothing really I can do. I do have nuts on them all, kind of holding them in place. I haven't like tightened them or anything because there's a ring that goes on the top of this and then the nuts go in. So this isn't where the nuts will eventually end up. So actually when I flip it upside down, as long as these nuts are tight enough that they're pressing on the plastic there, these bolts shouldn't press out the bottom, but still it's not something I want to do a bunch of. In fact, most of what I'm doing now is to the point where it's like, okay, it just needs that final sanding before painting, and I'm doing things like this and risking messing things up, and all that needs to be done before being painted is what's holding me up. I keep finding things. It's like, yeah, maybe I should do this before I paint and this before I paint, and just painting gets pushed back and back. Alright, so I'll stop this video now. It was mainly, and I don't know whether to put a warning on my earlier video where I'm doing the third ring or something, but if you're gluing yours together, put these two panels in before you put this on. And before you put this on, make sure your arms are in and fit and you're happy with it, because access to this is a pain in the neck once you have this glued to the ring below. And don't glue the top door in place until, I'm guessing you're done. I mean, this has to be painted white, and that top piece should be painted white, right? Because it's the inside of, and I show it like this. It doesn't go in this way. It goes in from behind, but you get the point. This is where it ends up at, but set further back. So, I mean, it needs to be white here on the bottom of it. But if you paint that white before you put the arms in, you have to take this out to get the arms in. So the arms need to be painted blue and the droid white, and then put the arms in, and then this panel goes in last. So this piece pretty much should be sanded, filled, painted white on its own, and then body white, get your arms done, and then once that lower arm is done and installed, then you can take this, and like I said, probably hot glue would be better than gluing it like I did with plastic glue across, where's my finger at? Across the top in this channel, because it slides into that channel. And then the front of it slides into a channel in the front. So I put glue all around this thing and slid it in and like I said, to eventually have access to your arms is probably just to put it in place like this, and then maybe just put some hot glue in the corners. And that way, if you ever need to remove it, you don't have to do what I did, which was take a knife, taking a X-Acto knife and keep scoring and scoring and scoring around this side. And then eventually my glue, it looks like, didn't get quite all the way forward because it doesn't appear like it was glued in the front. It was just glued on the side and the back. So once I had the glue broken free from this area here, and I just kind of ran a knife straight down there and was able to pop the thing out. So yeah, lesson learned. I wish the instructions had stuff like that in them, but they don't. At least they didn't, the instructions, when I downloaded them a year ago. I've ordered the blinking lights for this panel, and this panel, no idea when they're going to show up. I didn't build them myself like I did the lights in the dome. Kind of treated myself buying a pre-assembled kit. It just comes in, gets like hot glued in place from the back. The PCB with the LEDs already in it, and then there's a controller board that you mount back there somewhere out of the way, and just run wires to this panel and that panel. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this one.